Hello everyone out there on YouTube, this is Spoke777 here on YouTube, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on people who say that the moral and ceremonial laws are non-distinguishable and they're all the same thing and they're all a shadow, and basically they're saying this because they don't like the fourth commandment that requires them to give God their time on a consistent weekly basis. So, and I always wonder why they even bother to go to church on Sunday. It's not even in the scriptures. And the reality is, a lot of them don't. They'll go to church this week and maybe the next week. Or maybe they won't even go to church at all, which they have no obligation to, unlike Sabbatarians, because we believe the fourth commandment is a binding moral principle of spending time with the Lord as God asked. Because He's God and you're not God, you can't make it a day in 7 because God chose the day in 7. And what He chose is what you do and what you follow. If you try to make it some other day, you're taking power that doesn't belong to you and are being very blasphemous. Because you're not God. You're not God at all. Now, if I had a sign that said, Bill is coming, and that's a law I put out, that everybody puts out a billboard, everywhere, people are to say, Bill is coming. Bill is coming. Now, after his bill has come, and he's left, guess what? That law is ceremonial. Now, is it the same thing if I held you down and raped you? You're not going to say, oh, by the way, it was just a ceremonial law there when it said thou shalt not commit adultery. Joseph, he didn't commit adultery with Potiphar's wife because he knew the 10 Commandments. He knew the commandment that said thou shalt not commit adultery. Abraham got in trouble because he told a lie. Thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. And you know this. There's no point in arguing against it. You're not going to kill, commit adultery, steal, or cheat. And to say that this makes much more sense now, because now committing adultery is on the same level as the sign to tell you everybody by law that Bill is coming. Or to say that traffic laws and the laws of physics are all the same laws, that there really are no distinction between the two. And if the Bible speaks in such weirdness like such, then why do you even believe the Bible? That doesn't make any sense at all. That's not rational. If I was an atheist and you're trying to convince me to believe the Bible, you probably would not convince me. The reason is because you would push me away. Now, I grew up believing in science. I believe science was where I began at before I became religious. And I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist church, unlike R.E.S. Day 2, who became a Seventh-day Adventist. I grew up in that church. However, I was sort of laid back. I didn't know what my church actually taught on a lot of things. I heard from church them quote a passage that said, the Lord shall ascend from heaven with a shout when the voice of the archangel and the dead in Christ shall rise first. And I never could understand, after hearing that passage, why people say you're going to heaven to be with the Lord upon death when Christ has to come back to raise you from the dead. If you're already in heaven to begin with, it makes no sense. And as a scientist, I curiously wondered how this brain can make any rational sense with the immortality of the soul doctrine. So I was actually sitting here a little earlier, making a parody of the song Head and shoulders, fingers and toes, and so I was going, the brain versus the immortal soul, the brain here, it has memories in these folds, does the immortal soul have it? So the memory of the dead is forgotten, because all this memory of the dead gone. Can they think anymore? Worms are nibbling over here, no more judgment or thoughts or processing going on, no more hand and eye coordination. That's cerebellum. It controls a lot of automated things like walking and running and jogging. It's really cool. I really got to get back into studying the brain. I mean, when you're dead, there's no neurons firing, no axons firing, no dendrites receiving, no impulses traveling down that branch of the axon being insulated by a myelin shell that hits these sacs at the end of it that contain neurotransmitters. They open up, neurotransmitters go across, chemical reactions take place with receptors on the other side, and all this has a lot to do with emotion and the way you act. So when they try to say the spirit has emotion, yeah, because my breath can definitely show a lot of emotion in it. So can my heart. All affected by what? Tropic hormones in the body. Think about it. There's tropic hormones released from the pituitary that go to the adrenal glands that get it to activate adrenaline. Flight response. Not from an immortal ghost, it comes from your body. So, science and logic just seem to be set aside, and I couldn't understand it. But, however, going out of not being really religious for a long while, and this is pretty cool. Part of this thing inside is something called the hippocampus that has to do with memory. If it gets destroyed, you can't remember anything. You have no short-term memory. All your existing memories will stay, but no new ones can be formed. It's interesting because I watched this video from the library. It was made by the Discovery Channel. It had a guy, and he had a person who had a stroke that lost that part of his brain. He could remember anything after that. He could learn new skills that seem to bypass the hippocampus, which go into the hand and eye coordination, because not all the brain. You see, look at this. Comes up through this part here. Some of it has nerves that go directly to other parts. There's some things called cranial nerves, and I feel like these parts can learn things without you really thinking. That's why a lot of times you're just doing stuff. You don't even remember how you learn it. You just know how to ride a bike. I don't remember how I learned to ride a bike. I remember there's a time I didn't, and I had to practice, but hey, it doesn't come from a ghost. It comes from my brain. And the emotions. Oh yeah, something called the limbic system. I can name love, for example. Oxytocin. Released, at least even released when a woman is breastfeeding. There's different neurotransmitters that have to do with aggression and food and appetite, and different parts of the brain where they're at. They have different reactions, different emotions. Schizophrenia is caused by a neuron imbalance, not by a defective immortal ghost in your body. So, when Solomon said the dead know nothing because, well, they can't know anything. And what about the idea of thinking? Well, CAT scans. Have you ever seen any of those? Put somebody in one of those things and it shows all the different parts of their brain that lights up as you're doing things. It's pretty cool. Can't wait to get into that. Right now I gotta take a lot of GECs. I'm taking chemistry. I have to take chemistry, physics, math. First and foremost is math. I gotta know my derivatives though. In limits, I get to learn integrals and the antiderivative first. Well, anyhow, this is book 777. Hope that made plenty of sense how rational thinking and scientific and logical common sense, if the Bible isn't with it, then I really have serious doubts about the Bible and why do I even want to listen to Christianity to begin with. But however, being an Adventist and making more sense of soul sleep and the idea that law isn't done away with and the idea of a consistent Sabbath rest is really beneficial. Anyways, that's about all I got to say. Peace out then.